Okay, getting everything set up. I'm starting it at 11:45 my time, which is Central Standard Time, but I'm doing that for a reason. Uh, I had a pretty bad head cold this week, so to be honest with you, I really want to be able to get this done and taken over or taken care of. But don't worry, I mean, I'm gonna make sure everything's set up and done right. Make sure that YouTube's set up and got a good thumbnail to go with it. Before I go, I just check the audio. It sounds good. Let me see here. Esoteric Agenda, my midnight episode. It's the first time I've done midnight episodes. I don't know if I'm going to continue doing them. If you guys like this, leave a message for me and let me know. I'll do more streams at midnight if you guys do like them. I don't really know very much. Nobody really ever leaves comments for me. So if you are actually watching and you enjoy watching them, let me know. And I'll start making them. Okay, so here we go. Sounds good on Rumble. Sounds good on YouTube. Checking Kick. Kick sounds good. And so does Twitch. DLive is actually running. And it's running without me having any problems. Svetlana said earlier that I need to add my other channel links to the description so that they can find you guys can find me on DLive. And I wanted to do a shout out, say thank you, Svetlana, and I will do that. I'm just like I said, I'm a little bit under the weather right now, but I've been meaning to do that. I thought that I had those pictures that I have down there set up to where it would all you got to do is click on one of them and it sends you to my minds. But the weird part is that's the minds chat. Um, and the other one was Skype. So yeah, I'm gonna have to uh, change that one around. But the two pictures down below on DLive, the second one or the first one on the left hand side will take you to my mind's. Uh, it's supposed to be taking me to my mind's uh, profile or timeline, but it's taking me to the chat instead. So, um, did not mean for that. Oh well, it's my live with Roger Hanson chat. So, if you guys want to contact me on Minds, you can click on that one. I'll just go ahead and do something without the silly picture on there. Gives me something more to do, I guess. So tonight is my episode of Esoteric Agenda. This is my episode 12. That means that it is the last episode I am doing for this season. Technically, this is season 1, but I do have 15-minute videos of um, older videos that I had that I wanted to put together into this series and call it Esoteric Agenda. So this technically is season 1, but I do have older videos that are being posted on Rumble and YouTube that you can check out on the wonderful world of weirdness. Um, Now, these are also going to be cut down into 15 minutes. So you'll be able to see those again. Now, this doesn't just go on the wonderful world of weirdness. Esoteric Agenda actually comes off of my original YouTube channel, which is the Strange Stories. At one time, it was called The Strange, the Bizarre, the Unusual. I like it, but the name was too long, so I had to switch it. You can find that on YouTube for Strange Stories. I've also got a group on minds.com where you can go there too. I don't really interact too much on Minds anymore, but it is there if you guys want to check that out. Um, so, yeah, this is the last episode for this year. I'll come back next year and I will make more episodes for it. I know it's not like the most popular topic or anything, but these are things that I've always had an interest in ever since I started doing my streams. You know what I mean? They're not the most popular. They're not. It's more about the esoterics basically. But I this time I was a little bit better on it. I took it a little bit slower, in my opinion. So I'm really satisfied with that. I have my talking points that I want to go through. Now, I was debating the last episode if I wanted to actually um, go further or if I wanted to just recap. And then I thought about it and I was like, you know what? I think I'm just going to go ahead and do a recap on some of the stuff I went over and just basically have a conversation about it if I can. I know that I'm still going to have to use my talking points so that I can remember what I'm talking about and kind of stay on topic, which without my talking points, I would have a tendency of straying off. Now, if you guys do want to make comments or anything, feel free to say something in the chats. You know what I mean? I will talk to you and give you the best response I can. You know what I mean to what I'm talking about. Or if you just want to make a comment about the stuff I'm talking about, that's fine too. So I have my chats opened up so that I can tell if somebody sends me a message on Rumble, YouTube, Kick, Twitch, and DLive. I could have some other channel streaming, I don't know. But with that being said, let me go ahead and get into it. Now, when I first started out, I started talking about the Magna Mater. Now, the Magna Mater cult is what really stuck out to me. Now, before I start getting into the cult itself, the Magna Mater is actually the Great Mother or the goddess Cybele. If you guys have heard of Cybele, okay. Now, Cybele, the goddess Cybele, she was worshipped originally. She was a Phrygian goddess, okay? She was originally Phrygian. And then she was later incorporated into the Roman religions in the 3rd century BC. So that was what I started out with. The goddess Cybele, Magna Mater cult, and Magna Mater, who is Cybele. And the reason why I started there was because the thing about her is she the Magna Mater stone, first of all, was something that really fascinated me. Now the whole story about this Phrygian goddess being incorporated into Roman religion goes back to the um, the Putrid Wars. I forgot the name of it again, but it was basically where they were at war and they felt that they needed to have the power of Cybele to help them defeat their enemies, which was the Phoenicians at the time. And they ended up transporting this stone, this from Phrygia to Rome. Now, this stone, it wasn't shaped or by a sculptor or anything. It was naturally shaped to where it looked like it had a resemblance of the human female, and it was very, very important to him. Now, it was solid black. Um, and it really stuck out to me for two reasons, because you hear stories about the Black Madonna. That's one of them. But then also Phrygia. Okay. Now, the Phrygians go back all the way to the mystery of the ancient sea people, who did multiple invasions on Egypt. And at that time, after those invasions were done, that was actually the beginning to uh, the ancient Egyptian kingdom's decline. They slowly started becoming weaker and weaker as time went on. And I don't know, this is conjecture, but what if this stone had something to do with that? You know what I mean? What if they actually took this stone from Egypt all the way to Phrygia and left it there, and they used it to worship, the Great Mother or the goddess Cybele? Um, that was something that really stuck out to me. Now, this stone, as time went by, it just vanished without a trace. They don't know where it went to, but they know that it existed, Um, and that was something that really stuck out to me. That's what made me think of the Black Madonna, which is uh, Mary or Madonna, a Madonna thing. But it's black. It's a black stone figure of it. So and like I said, that's pure conjecture. There's no evidence or anything that backs what I'm saying, but that did stick out to me when I heard that. So now, when you turn around and you look at that, and then you also look at the black stone that's inside of, I got a dog barking in the background. When you sit and you look at like the stone that's worshipped by the Muslims, where everybody's walking around it too, they say that could have been a meteorite. Well, what about this stone? It could have been a meteorite too, or this could have actually been the stone, if not a part, or that stone could be a part of this stone right here that's being mentioned, because it disappeared, Um, things like that really sticks out to you. And this also, the reason why it makes me think of the Black Madonna is because the Romans, when they worshiped Magna Mater in their rituals and everything, all of this had to do with Roman virtue. It also had to do with like religious and civic duties. You know what I mean? That's what they that was the ceremonies that they had. They had rituals that included like processions. They'd play music with cymbals and drums, and then they'd have dancing and stuff like that. Now, this is where we get into the cult. Excuse me, guys. If I do that again, I'll mute out. Now, the cult is very, very interesting. Now, the Magna Mater had a cult that consisted of priests, were her priests, and they were called the Galli. The Galli um, were priests that practiced self mutilation, and that was weird. They didn't do it in public. No, in public they had like the processions and the music and the dancing and the drums and stuff of that nature. But in private, in behind closed doors, these priests believed in going into frenzies and self mutilating themselves. They would make themselves into eunuchs by castrating themselves, and this was a part of their ritual. Now, this is where it starts getting weird. Okay, the priests underwent ritual castration, and they did it uh, as a devotion, and their devotion was them imitating um, a myth that was believed back then of a god named Attis. Okay, now Attis, when you listen to people who believe in like ancient astronauts, ancient aliens, ancient astronauts and stuff like that, and people who are into metaphysics or the cosmos, things like I've been talking a lot about. You'll hear a lot. Sometimes you'll hear people talking about the pine cone, especially with the Sumerians. You'll see something that looks like a pine cone in the hieroglyphs. You know what I mean? And you'll see it everywhere. You'll see it all up. Now, Attis, excuse me, was the consort of Cybele. Okay. Now, the whole story behind this myth is very, very interesting. Um, um, and it's believed that uh, he castrated himself in a frenzy of like divine madness. Now, his story, um, what that did is that kind of that that appealed to like a lot of mystery religions in the Roman world, basically. Now, and the reason for it, that these people who it appealed to were people who like were seeking personal salvation through suffering, initiations, and rebirths and stuff. And you'll see people who are really, really deep into the Catholic religion where they will whip themselves. Okay. And this is an actual practice where they'll take their shirt off and they will literally whip themselves, and they believe in this stuff, and it's actually truth. There's nothing false about that. So that's one thing that really stuck out to me. Now, the castration, that goes all the way back into Roman and Greek mythology. I believe it was Kronos, or Kronos, who castrated his father Uranus, which I had covered in a previous series that I did, Ancient Mysteries. But that goes all the way back to there. Um, and it's practiced. It was practiced all over the ancient Far East. Um, you actually rose in status if you castrated yourself and joined one of these cults, or even if you were a part of a royal court, you know what I mean, and you were a eunuch, it actually helped you. Uh, so that's something that, even though it is weird today, it was something that people actually did, and for a lot of different reasons. You know what I mean? Now, Attis also symbolized like a form of divine suffering and transformation, basically, is what it was. And like I said, he appealed to certain mystery religions. Now, the rituals of Attis, um, particularly as they evolved in the Roman cult of Cybele. It it did involve like powerful symbolic elements, and the pine tree was one of them. This is where the pine cone enters the story. The pine tree, when it comes to rituals that involved Addis, was very, very important. Okay. Also, the bull and the disc. Okay. Um, Now, these three things, the disc, the bull, and the pine tree, okay, they all played like distinct roles in mythology and religions all over the place, not just in Rome. Okay. Um, Now, this also has to do, you got to understand, with Attis's death, his rebirth, and it also had a spiritual significance. And I guess the best way that I can do this is to basically kind of give you a breakdown of what the myth is. Now I can tell you this. Okay, now according to most of the common versions of the tale, Cybele fell in love with Attis. Okay, but she, even though she fell in love with Attis, he became involved romantically with a mortal woman. Now, in a fit of jealousy and rage, Cybele drove Attis mad, which led him to castrate himself. Uh, and he did that in a frenzy beneath a pine tree. Now, the story after that varies. He either died or he was transformed. Um, Now, the pine tree became sacred in his honor. Now, in some versions of the story, Cybele later comes back and resurrects him or grants him some form of eternal life or spiritual immortality. There's different versions of it you know what I'm saying, determining on where you hear the story from. Because you got to remember, it's not just in Rome, but it's also in Phrygia, or the Phrygians in Phrygia actually believe this too. Okay, so that's the basic uh, tale. That's basically how it played out um, with Cybele and Attis. Now the the black stone, what I said. Now during the festival that takes place, this black stone that's supposed to represent the goddess Cybele, it was paraded through the streets. Um, then you had like dramatic performances, and then they would do sacrifices, and they were all conducted. There was one that I actually saw on YouTube that was kind of cool. It was, well, it's cool to me because I'm into history, but they took a bull and they literally took the bull, put it up on like a, well, I guess you could say table, and then they had one of the villagers, and this happened here in today's world. They put one of the villagers underneath the bull, and then they freaking cut the bull's throat and allowed the blood to flow down on top of him. It's really, really, really strange, but that's what happened. It actually put that's how they would do it. You know what I mean? And that was their sacrifice with this bull. Now the sanctuary that they had, which was in Ostian, I believe is what they called it. Ostian, yeah, that's what it is. Ostian. Um, they have reliefs and statues um, that depict the Magna Mater. Now, the weird thing about this is like Magna Mater, I keep calling it Magna Mater, but it's Magna Mater or Cybele is enthroned, okay, and flanked by lions, uh, which is a common symbol for her, uh, um, which represents power and untamed nature. Okay, now Cybele and the Magna Mater, that's what they represent. They represent natural nature, untamed nature, the wild. You know what I mean? Um, Now the throne, when you get into learning about the esoterics, you'll start finding out that in these iconographies, um, they usually do that. They have animals that are flanked around this goddess or this god. You know what I mean? And with the Magna Mater, it was uh, her being or enthroned up on a throne, and she was flanked by lions. The throne uh, signified legitimacy, okay, permanence, and this also was like the goddess's rule over the cosmic or the natural order. You know that's usually what that represents. Now, how this all became even more strange, and how it connects more when I think of like the Black Madonna is the story that goes with this this black stone and how it was transported to Rome. Okay, there was a legendary figure uh, in early Roman history, and her name was Claudia Quinta. I mean, it's a very, very interesting story. Um, Now, she represented Roman virtue, particularly the idea of pedicitia or chastity. Now, I've mentioned chastity, and I before I get into all that, I do want to go through this whole thing with Roman virtue and chastity when it comes to Claudia Quinta. I can come back to that, but this this is what really stuck out to me when it comes to the Madonna, the Black Madonna, and when it comes to uh, the Catholic belief in Mother Mary and all of that. You know, according to the tradition, when the Romans decided to import the goddess from Phrygia, which is modern day Turkey, to Rome, um, this was in response to prophecies that were made during the war with Hannibal. Okay, the Punic Wars. That's what it was. I now I remember. Now that's the reason why they wanted to bring her to Rome was because of these prophecies that were made during the war with Hannibal that said that if they brought this black stone from Phrygia to Rome, it would give them protection and victory. Okay. Now, her sacred image, like I said, was a black stone, and it was believed to embody the goddess. Uh, Now, this was transported by sea. So, as the story goes, the ship that was carrying the Magna Mater, it reached the mouth of the Tiber River, and it became stuck and couldn't be pulled upstream. Now, the priests that were there interpreted this as a divine sign, and they decided that only a woman of perfect chastity could successfully bring the goddess into the city. So while that was going on, Claudia Quinta, uh, who was a Roman matron of like noble birth, um, she had been the subject of rumors and slander concerning her virtue, and because of that, she stepped forward to prove her innocence and devotion. Okay, so she prayed to the goddess for vindication. Um, and when she did that, she was asserting her chastity before the people and the gods, and Magna made her herself too. So um, then, according to the story, she miraculously hauled the massive ship free with her own hands and nobody else, just by herself, thereby clearing her name and winning divine approval. So that is how all of that plays out. Now, later on, I want to get into something else that I was discussing. I'm not going to go through everything I did in these episodes because I know I covered a lot, but that actually plays out to another area that I want to go into that concerns the lotus, and I will get to that here in a minute. But before I do, I want to talk about Ostanus. And I keep calling him Osanus, but it's Ostanus. Now, Ostanus, before I get going, there's no proof that Ostanus ever existed. But Ostanus, the name Ostanus, is mentioned in all tons of texts that that are about alchemy. They're about mystery schools. They're about magic. All of that. The term Ostanus is mentioned, and that's because Ostanus is supposed to be a master of secret arts, particularly in the realms of transmutation, the preparation of elixirs, and the spiritual dimensions of matter. That was a big one. Now, he was also credited with describing the stages of alchemical work. And now these often included operations like calcination, dissolution, coagulation, and sublimation. Now, each with both material and spiritual implications too. That's the important part. When people look at alchemy and they hear the word, alchemist, they think that these people were trying to turn lead into gold, which that's what a lot of people have been led to believe. But then they hear words like the philosopher's stone and they don't put two and two together. Okay. Now this is the stone that these people believe in. Okay. They believe in it 100%. And I've mentioned this in previous episodes, and I'll mention it again. Now they could have called this stone anything they wanted to. They could have called it, the transmutation stone. They could have called it, the dimensions of matter stone, spiritual dimensions of matter stone. But they didn't. They called it the philosopher's stone, and they did that for a reason. This had a lot to do with philosophy. It didn't have to do with the physical transformation of, or it didn't just have to do with the direct transformation of lead into gold. That was a representation of what they felt that they should do with themselves spiritually as well. Okay. Now, like I said, he was credited with the stages of alchemical works like calcination, dissolution, coagulation, and sublimation. Now, they had both material and spiritual implications. Now, they weren't only physical, they were also allegorical, and they symbolized the journey of the soul through suffering, purification, enlightenment, and union with the divine. Okay? This is what Astonis was supposed to have contributed to alchemy. Okay? Now, he's often credited in ancient and late antiquity sources with the introduction of popularization of what they called the magic techne, or the magical arts. Um, and he introduced that into the Hellenistic world. Now, the term magica techne, which is Tecne, uh, means the art of the magi. Okay, um, so this basically implies that it's more than just sleight of hand or superstition. You know what I mean? Now, for Astonis, uh, he had this thing about what he referred to as the divine spark. Okay, and for Astonis, to awaken the divine spark within yourself involved rigorous discipline. Okay, so first you had to go through physical purification, and there's mental concentration, and often there was the use of sacred rituals and materials uh, from the pharmacopoeia. Now, this is the part that a lot of people love to hear about when they hang out with me, because everybody who I always talk about this stuff, uh, they love to talk about drugs. And yes, it is there. Even though I do not condone the use of drugs and everything, I do have to say that there were people who were ancient alchemists who believed in this cult, and there was an actual cult. And it was called the cult of pharmacopoeia. Okay, and this actually existed. Um, now, now, this process was not unlike refining gold from base ore. Just as matter required multiple stages of calcination, dissolution, and distillation, so too did the soul require testing, cleansing, and distillation. Um, uh, Now, when you talk about the soul, though, it required testing, cleansing, and enlightenment before it could rise. Okay, so that is something that you have to take into consideration. Hold on while I block a spammer on Twitch again. They hit me on both Twitch and on Kick. Boy, I'm a popular guy today, man. He just keeps sending all these cool messages. Maybe I should do that so I can get like 50 million views and be cool, or just like pull out my pocketbook and pay for it, right? But anyhow, I don't want to get too distracted. Yeah. Now, that's something that I wanted to say. Now, the whole thing behind Astonish, okay, to awaken the divine spark, um, uh, in involved the process. Now, this process wasn't unlike refining gold or base metal. You know what I mean, or base ores. Uh, it was pretty much in line with it. So whenever you were doing this, it was representing uh, the same thing basically. Just as metal required, these stages of calcination, dissolution, and distillation, the soul required testing, cleansing, and enlightenment before it could rise. Okay? Now, that is the basic interpretation of it. And you had to practice that exact way. That was the way that he believed in it. Now, moving on to the cult of pharmacopoeia, now it also extended into alchemical practices. Now, here, substances were transformed not only for physical benefit, but like, but uh, no, for like physical benefits like allergies, but also for like spiritual processes. Okay. Now, metals were purified or fused in ways that were believed to mirror the elevation of the soul. Okay. Um, and that was the refinement of matter. Um, now, that became a ritual act of devotion and inner refinement, too. Okay. Because, like I said, um, it's not just about calcination, dissolution, and distillation, but it's also about testing, cleansing, and enlightenment. Okay, so that is something that alchemist had to take into consideration. His soul had to be enlightened and pure before he could actually do what he needed to do with the transforming the lead into gold. So that was actually like a twofold thing. It was a physical as well as a spiritual process. So metals were purified or fused in ways that they believed uh, mirrored the elevation of the soul, basically. Um, Now, the refinement of matter became a ritual act of devotion as well as a inner refinement. You know, um, now the presence of the divine spark in all things also meant that the boundary between sacred and profane was not fixed. Okay, but could be crossed through proper ritual and understanding. That's uh, how alchemists felt about it. Now, the divine spark was often thought to be obscure or corrupted by the heaviness of matter or the distractions of the senses. Okay, so and when I say the senses, you got to remember the physical and then the spiritual. So, the heaviness of the matter or the distraction of the senses. Um, so much of Astonis's esoteric practices likely centered on stripping away illusion and impurity. You know what I mean? That is a lot of what actually was taking place there. So when you look at the whole process of alchemy and you see how they did their their practices when it came to trying to uh, transform lead into gold, that's what they're basically trying to do. Okay, they're trying to strip away. Well, not only that, but spiritually, they're trying to strip away illusion and impurity. The realm of the soul, or in the realm of the soul, Astonis taught that humans cannot achieve spiritual elevation purely by will or intellect. Okay, now this is where things started getting weird. Now he believed that that a spiritual guide or a divine an intermediary or a celestial intelligence was required in order for the soul to be drawn upward. Um, Now, these intermediaries, they weren't always visible or personified. They were a part of like the cosmological structure, um, in which like higher truths filtered down through levels of being. So, rituals, symbols, prayers, or inner devotion served as tools to attract the presence of, of these mediators. For Astanas, these beings or energies, uh, they weren't optional spiritual concepts. They were essential. You know what I mean? You had to have them. Without them, transformation was either incomplete or it was corrupted. So, whenever they were doing their attempts at making lead into gold and they failed in their minds, their transformation was either incomplete or it was corrupted because there was something wrong within their soul. You know what I mean? Because they didn't have the presence of these mediators to help guide them. They believe that. This is all from Ostanas, you know. And I've been trying to talk to Mr. Robot about this guy, and like he really has a hard time of grasping them. You know what I mean? So I figured that I would give it my best shot at trying to elaborate more on how important Astonis was to the alchemist, you know, because these are concepts that he was credited for. You can find it in some of the alchemical texts, and he was also responsible for magic as well. So um, that's another thing at another time, maybe. Now, according to Astonis, the true goal of the alchemists wasn't simply to change the outside world. It was to reawaken and amplify the divine logos within the self and the substance. That was what he felt was the true goal. It was to reawaken and amplify, and he did believe in the divine logos. So that is Astonis. Um, it's kind of complicated, you know what I'm saying? It's not really easy to explain Astonis, but that's probably the best way that I could have done it, you know. Um, in my previous episodes, just actual last previous episode, I mentioned some other characters that were involved with with alchemy, and that's very very important too. But without, you know, because I don't want to stick on Astonis all night because I've only got maybe about 20-30 minutes left that I want to do this. Um, but I wanted to get into the lotus flower. Okay, now the lotus flower it held a lot of deep meaning to the Egyptian culture. It was closely tied to the concept of rebirth, creation, and purity. Now, this created a rich symbolic environment that involved Aphrodite. It's and Aphrodite emerges as a central figure. Okay, um, she links earthly beauty and passion to like cosmic harmony and spiritual transformation. Okay, now her association with both the lotus and the rose uh, reflects her multifaceted nature, basically, as like the goddess of love, light, and secret wisdom. Now, um, the imagery that's usually portrayed when it comes to Lotus and with Aphrodite usually portrays her as like a radiant queen of the cosmos whose mysteries inspire awe and reverence and initiation. Secrecy is very, very important. And in Egypt, the concept of the little boy with the finger over his mouth, that was something that that was very important when it came to when it came to the esoterics. So, and that was linked to Aphrodite. It was also linked to the lotus and so forth. Now, in Eastern traditions, particularly in Hinduism and Buddhism, the lotus it remained a profound spiritual symbol, to be honest. Now, that still represents purity, enlightenment, and transcendence, okay? But, I've mentioned this before, and this is more of my conjecture, which Mr. Mark Edworthy would call it. But, I see it more than that with Buddha because there has got to be something that's very esoteric in the message that's being portrayed when you look at Buddha. Okay, now take a look at Buddha real quick. On every statue you see of the Buddha, he is always sitting in the lotus position. And when you say the lotus position here in the United States, you call that Indian style. Usually, with everybody else, it's crossing your legs together. Okay, now lotus the lotus, what it represents purity, enlightenment, transcendence. It also represents love, light, things of that nature, secrecy. Now, I have gone through on previous episodes and I discussed some of the incantations um, that involve having a brain part now that involve her. Okay, that involve um, now let me see if I can find her name. Aphrodite. Okay, these incantations that involve Aphrodite. Okay, um, they have a lot to do with sex magic. Okay, now sex magic, a lot of people get real distracted with that because when they think sex magic, they think people like John Dee and the experience that happened with him and his wife, which that is a part of sex magic. Don't get me wrong, it is, okay? But there's another part about it too, and this goes back to chastity, okay? Um, Now, when you look at chastity, what chastity is withholding sex, okay? You take that word chastity and you change it around and you say chastise. Now, in magic, when you chastise spirits or gods or goddesses, what you're doing is you're taking a commanding role, okay? You're saying, I'm the one in control and this is what you're going to do. So when they chastised these entities, that was what they were doing. They were commanding them. Okay, so when it comes to chastity, you're actually commanding that spirit. You're commanding Aphrodite. Okay, you're saying, look, you you will do what I want you to do, and you can use that in order to well, as a form of sex magic, basically, in order to freaking develop and grow, um, um, purity, things of that nature, and this is what we've been talking about here. And that, like I said, this is just pure conjecture. I could be wrong. I'm most likely wrong. I'm wrong about maybe 99.5% of the stuff I talk about. But reading through this stuff, it really sticks out to me that that could be what it means with Buddha sitting in the lotus position. It's where that's your secret spot. That is where you command this form of magic. You know what I mean? You control it, and it's chastity. It's chastising these entities that are involved with sex. At least that's what it seems like to me. And like I said, I know it probably sounds awkward hearing it, but I usually don't have very, um, I don't have too many problems with discussing sex. You know what I mean? I think that it's probably something that would make people a lot more healthier if they were able to openly discuss it. But it's just a thought that I have. You guys can take that on your own um, level if you want to take it. If you don't, I'm fine with it too. It's fine. It's just something that really stuck out to me, and it's like I said. I really uh, wanted to start this up early so that I could get through it and be done with it because I'm sick of it, sick as a dog. And this is some of the important stuff that I did want to point out because this is stuff that really did stick out to me. Now, the whole thing with like the Magnamator, that stuff is a trip, um, especially about Addis in the pine cone tree, or yeah, the pine tree, pine cones. You know, a lot of people relate that to the cerebellum within the brain, and they start talking about well, uh, cosmic weave, basically parapsychology, all of that stuff. It's ancient aliens mention it all the time, and it's always got something to do with the human brain. So that's another element that really stuck out to me when it comes to that. Castration. I've mentioned that before, and I find it really, really odd that castration was done that way. And I believe that also is connected to sex magic as well. Um, like I said about the refraining from sexual acts, chastity, and chastising these entities. And all of this actually started out with me whenever I started doing research into John Dee. If you guys ever get a chance, read about John Dee. That is some really, really interesting stuff. Um, and that's where I actually started getting interested in this stuff. So it kind of sent me down this path. I was really glad about how I did this too because the first time around I missed a lot, um, and I was able to kind of get a little bit more focus on this one. And I can go farther in this, but I liked how I did this because um, and I'm not trying to give the guy a plug or anything, but there's a guy that's on YouTube who does really, really good on his channel when it comes to the esoterics. And he has his own channel. It's called Esoterica. If you guys get a chance, go check him out, man, because that guy's got a lot of knowledge. He's a college professor who's actually been educated in the subject of esoterics. You know, he'll tell you about it. He'll tell you the books to look for. You might not be able to afford them, but at least you know the name of them. You know, you can pull up information, pull stuff together for yourself, things of that nature. Check him out, man. Get some knowledge from him. He really helped me out a lot. I took a step back. Um, like right now, if I was doing it the way I did before, I would have been talking about the Fibonacci uh, math and all that stuff and sacred geometry, and it's like I tapped a little bit into geometry, you know what I mean? But I didn't want to go there because I'm not even there yet, you know. I'm just tapping into it and introducing it in some of my episodes. So next season when I come back, I'll delve a little deeper into that. And I hope you guys enjoyed this, you know, because I really have. I've enjoyed this year quite a bit. This whole midnight thing, though, I don't know about all that. It's like I said, if you guys like these midnight episodes, let me know in the chats and stuff, and I'll do them again. But it's really weird. I had to do it. I was kind of pushed into it because I'm simulcasting Dragus production on Wednesday nights, and he's got some pretty good shows. Mark Watashik does, and I'm able to simulcast those, and that made it to where I had to push this show either before or after, and I was like, hey, why not just make it a midnight show, and do it right after I do Dragus production. So I decided to do that. Now, since I am doing Dragus on Wednesdays, I'm not doing any more shows afterwards. I'm going to close off Wednesdays just for doing that. So I'll keep doing Saturday and Sunday, but I'm going to be doing Dragus on Wednesdays for the Wonderful World of Weirdness, as well as no, that's it. Just on Wonderful World of Weirdness, I'll be doing Dragus Productions on Wednesdays. So I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, please like, subscribe, share, make comments, give me some feedback, especially on the midnight thing. If you want more midnight episodes, let me know, and I'll do them. I appreciate you listening. And if you want to check me out, you can check me out on Rumble, YouTube, Kick, Twitch, and DLive. Sometimes I have posts up on X. I stopped doing the live stream on there because it really isn't working out. It doesn't really benefit me to do that. I do have Strange Stories on YouTube as well. You can check that out. And I have Strange Stories, the group for Strange Stories on minds.com that you can check out. So with that, I'm going to end the show. Thank you guys for watching, and we will be back with more episodes of Esoteric Agenda next year. What we're going to do next, I do not know, but we'll have it. These are going to be new episodes for new series that I'm coming out with. I might pull up my Everything About Aliens and just make it a live stream, or do Into the Abyss. I've still got to finish that series. So I'll think about it, and I will get back to you guys on what I will be doing later. I hope you guys enjoyed this midnight episode of Esoteric Agenda, and I am done. Bye.